I seek leave to move a motion to provide for the first reading of the Sex Discrimination Amendment, Acknowledged Biological Reality, Bill 2024 as circulated.
Is leave granted? Leave is not granted. Senator Hanson.
Well, pursuant to contingent notice standing in my name, I move that so much of the standing orders be suspended as would prevent me moving a motion to provide for the consideration of matter, namely a motion to provide for the first reading of the Sex Discrimination Amendment Acknowledging Biological Reality, Bill 2024.
So, the question is, the motion is moved by Senator Hanson.
Thank you very much. Actually, I've been denied the right to actually introduce this bill. In the first reading speech, I was denied the right. That is very unusual in this place. Labor and the Greens have taken the highly unusual step of voting down a bill at the first reading that sought to reinforce the biological definitions of man and woman. This is a rare and alarming move that undermines our democratic process. By refusing this bill the chance to be debated, Labor and the Greens are not only silencing important discussions but also disregarding the voices of Australians who support One Nation's position on upholding biological reality. It's hard to find examples of bills being defeated at the first reading. One such example is the Government Preference Prohibition Bill of 1914, which was defeated at its first reading, triggering the first double dissolution in Australian history. In 1957, 14 bills related to banking reforms, including the Reserve Bank Bill and the Commonwealth Banks Bill, were also rejected at their first reading. I acknowledge that Senator Waters had legislation blocked at first reading in the last parliament. However, her bill was a narrow proposal for a parliamentary inquiry into whether Christian Porter, a government minister at the time, should remain in his role. Our belief was that allegations of this nature belong in the courts, not in parliament. There were serious concerns that this bill was using parliamentary privilege to make potentially defamatory claims against a government minister in an inappropriate manner. I was also point out that this is not the only example of my legislation being blocked at second reading. My Act's Interpretation Amendment Aboriginality Bill of 2023, legislation to resolve outstanding issues around the definition of Aboriginality, has also been blocked at first reading. In this instance, Coalition assisted Labor and the Greens, something I believe is a mistake and I will be seeking to address at a later date. What I've got pointed out here is that it's highly unusual for first readings to be stopped, and that's what you've done on two of my bills. We as members elected to this parliament have a right to introduce bills that I believe are important to the Australian people. You can't even debate it. As I keep saying again, you are the worst government we've ever seen. With the assistance mainly of David Pocock and a couple of the other crossbenchers, you actually shut down debate in this parliament. You're not open and honest. There's no accountability whatsoever. It is not up to you to decide whether the sex discrimination should be debated or not. It should go ahead. And there's a due process in this place. This is why we're all elected to this parliament, regardless of our political persuasions. We should have the right to discuss these issues. It's not based on what you think is right or not right. And it should be actually discussed and debated. The same as I tried to bring in the bills about puberty blockers and gender dysphoria and about sex hormones. You chose not to allow for that inquiry to happen based on your own principles. That's not representing the Australian people in this place. And then you turn around and you may call me racist, or you may say that I'm discriminating against people. You are discriminating against every woman out there who actually is crying out, because every time they're getting a slap in the face because men may decide they want to be a female, put a dress on, put some makeup on, put some high heels on, or do whatever they want to and think that they're a female. They are not females. Biologically, they are not females. You're either born a male or a female. I can understand that some people are trapped in a body they don't want to belong to. But you can't disrupt society as a whole when the majority of people in this country claim to be either male or female. You're allowing them to impinge on women's rights into their private spaces, into their change rooms, into sporting events, when there's only a small minority of people that claim to be that. Women have fought for the rights in this country for so long, but you're denying them that rights. Who are you to decide that without open and honest debate? Biological sex is important in how we deal with this. And it's quite, when I have these feminists out there who say, I've never supported Pauline Hanson, but cripes, I've got to support her on this one. She's right in what she says. What are you so afraid of? Is it purely for the votes? Is it for your own political gains here? Look at common sense. Listen to the Australian people. They want debate on this. They want answers. They want common sense to prevail in this parliament. They don't want to be shut down. You have no right to do it to the Australian people, and stop shutting me down every time I raise something you don't like.
Now, I've got you standing as a minister, Senator Ayres, and then a minister, and then I think actually you have priority, don't you? And then I'll come to you, Senator Ayres.
Thanks, Deputy President. Deputy President, last week when Senator Hanson introduced the bill to which she refers in this motion, my colleague Senator Duniam made a statement to the Senate which I wish to quote in full in the context of the debate we are currently having. Senator Duniam said that while the Senate has the opportunity to reject a bill at the first reading stage, in practice the first reading is almost always passed without opposition and is regarded as a purely formal stage. The Coalition supports these normal procedures, as we have with many Greens, Labor or crossbench bills that we strongly opposed. The normal processes enables bills to be fairly considered and debated by the Senate before a substantive decision is taken. It should only be deviated from in the most extreme of circumstances, lest we deny the right of senators to even have matters debated. As in all cases, a vote on the first reading should not be taken as a position on the substantive legislation, especially where a bill has not had the opportunity to be the subject of normal internal processes. Deputy President, it was with concern that a first reading was denied last week in relation to this bill. I say that not because the Coalition has a formal position on this bill, and I say that indeed as somebody who is very clear that at a personal level I abhor the weaponisation of issues that affect particularly vulnerable, young, transgender or other individuals across Australia. However, the importance of ensuring that this parliament is able to function and that issues that indeed are considered in parliaments around the world have been the subject of consideration, for example, by both Conservative and Labor governments in the United Kingdom, and this parliament ought to have the same abilities for people to bring forward issues for, at least, the consideration under the normal standards and procedures. It will become an increasingly difficult and dangerous precedent if parties that can muster the numbers deny the first reading of a bill. The structure and process that we have in this parliament for bills to be considered on 3 substantive votes is important. The first reading simply enabling a bill to sit then on the notice paper and for senators to have the opportunity to use that time to consider it, often for it to be referred to committee but not always, but for that time to be an important point of understanding the content of a bill before a substantive or meaningful vote is taken. The second reading being, of course, the customary substantive and meaningful vote on the principle overall of a bill, but oftentimes senators choosing sometimes to grant a second reading subject to potential amendments being considered and reserving ultimately their position on the third reading. Each of these points and steps plays an important role in the way in which we go about our business in this place. And if we enter an environment where those who can muster the numbers routinely deny a first reading on issues, it will make it harder for senators to do their job. It will make it harder in particular for those on the crossbench to do their job, but potentially for those in opposition now or in the future to do their job, or for any who could be the victim of being silenced in terms of having their bills enter into that formal process of parliamentary consideration. So, Deputy President, we will be voting to grant that first reading and that opportunity for the first reading to be had, not because we have taken a position in relation to the substantive nature of the bill itself, but because we have a principled position in relation to the way in which the parliament should conduct its affairs and its business, and the way in which the rights of individual senators to bring bills forward should be respected and subject to routine processes and consideration, rather than having those routine processes subverted through an early rejection at the first reading stage.
I'm going to the government, and then I will come to the Greens.
What we just saw from Senator Birmingham was a quisling concession to far-right extremism by the party that once pretended that it represented the centre-right, used to represent the centre-right of Australian politics, used to represent the centre-right, unrecognisable to real Liberals, now an outfit that is just an appendage of One Nation and right-wing extremism that is out there in the community. It was a mealy-mouthed abrogation of Senator Birmingham's role as a leader of the Liberal Party and conservative politics in this place. It was giving the game away to far-right extremism and what goes on in the cesspool of social media that is out there doing so much damage to normal Australian democracy. It's the weird stuff. It's the weird stuff that's going on there in social media that has taken hold of the imagination, of Liberals and Nationals out there. I agree in one respect in relation to Senator Birmingham's outline, that it should not be a normal thing that we do in here to deny a first reading of a piece of legislation. That we should not do it normally. But what it does mean is that we should do it when it matters and when it's a reaffirmation of this Senate's role. Senator Hughes says we should never do it. Well, it wouldn't take very long, would it, to get to the kind of propositions that each of us would think should not be the subject of these kinds of pretend pieces of legislation. It's not really a piece of legislation. It's not really a bill. What it really is an opportunity to propagate far-right propaganda. An opportunity to propagate far-right propaganda. That's what this is, an attempt to weasel the way into the outrage debate by hurting little kids. That's what this really is. That's what this is really about. I think Senator Hanson's on a point of order.
Senator Hanson.
I want Senator Ayres to actually withdraw that implication, stating that it's not a bill. It is a bill, and it has every right to be introduced into the parliament.
It's a debating point, but Senator Ayres, can I ask you to just be measured in this debate? It's not assisting the change. It's not assisting the change, and you are sailing close to the wind.
I'm happy to withdraw it if it assists that, and to listen to your advice carefully, Deputy President. What this is really about, this discussion, is not about the kind of propositions that One Nation advances in terms of these issues. I think we've all given up on them being a place of moderation and the national interest and the interests of ordinary families. But it is a test for what passes for what used to be the centre-right party in Australian politics, but now is more extreme than they've ever been, more far-right than they've ever been. And these questions of gender identity are questions that are deeply personal for individuals, particularly for children. And what is required by this is where words hurt and words matter. It's done with deliberate forethought and understanding of the consequences that it has for ordinary people and ordinary families out there. It is utterly damaging and it ought to stop. What should this Senate be focusing on this week? Well, we've got a bill in here that will mean 10,000 more Australians, low-income Australians, will be able to buy their own home. The Future Made in Australia bill should be dealt with in this place will mean that we rebuild Australian manufacturing. And what is the party of the supposed centre-right of Australian politics want to spend this week on? This stuff. And it ought to stop. It ought to stop, and you ought to focus on what actually matters for ordinary Australians.
Down this bill in the first reading speech because we knew it was hateful and transphobic. This is done extremely rarely, but we have a duty of care to the trans community. Senator Hanson's was not a genuine attempt to legislate. It was a thinly veiled attempt to attack our trans community. And would we do it again? Yes, we would. Why? Because we know that anti-trans rhetoric causes lasting harm to trans and gender-diverse people by stoking the flames of transphobia and hate. Trans and gender-diverse communities are strong and resilient, but we know that they face disproportionate levels of harassment, abuse and even violence because of views like these. Our LGBTIQA+ communities should be supported and cared for, not used as a political football by people like Senator Hanson who would prefer to deny their very existence. I saw that my speech last week was shared on social media and brought out thousands and thousands of people's vitriol and attacks, but you know what? It strengthens my resolve, and it strengthens the resolve of the Greens to get up in this place and to represent the views of the diverse, rich trans community who are sick of this disgusting rhetoric, this disgusting level of debate, as is the broader Australian community. Disgraceful act of political disgust. It's just disgusting. All people have fundamental human rights and are entitled to equal protection under the law without any discrimination, including on the basis of sex, sexual or romantic orientation, gender identity or sex characteristics. To all the trans kids and young people out there, I want you to know that I and the Greens have your back, and we will go into bat for you at any chance we have. You deserve to be celebrated. You deserve to be safe, to be yourself. You deserve all good things in the world because you are magnificent. We must do more to call out transphobia. We need to work together to actively dismantle it because trans rights are non-negotiable. I said it last week and I'll say it again. They are non-negotiable. We must work towards a safer world for the trans and gender-diverse community. They must feel safe, respected and valued, living their lives treated as equals and free from discrimination. The Greens will always stand in solidarity with the trans community against hatred and bigotry and against Senator Hanson's awful attacks.
Senator Roberts.
Thank you, President. Labor and the LNP, the Liberal National Party, said the practice is to allow first readings. That's correct. Yet after saying that, the Labor Party contradicted it and joined with their mates, the Greens, again and again and again. Odgers, the authority, says it's a parliamentary formality. It's rarely contravened. What's happening is the Labor Party and the Greens and some crossbenchers are shutting down the voice of the representatives of the people. You're silencing not just the Senate, you're silencing the people. And now we have Senator Ayres declaring that this is not a bill. Well, why don't we just suspend the Senate and let Senator Ayres take over instead? Shutting down the voice of a representative of the people is silencing the people. Aussies believe in a fair go. Aussies believe in democracy. Labor and the Greens clearly do not. Let's not beat around the bush. We all know what this is about. It's about suppressing Pauline Hanson, Senator Hanson, because she resonates with Australians. She listens and she resonates with Australians. This is the latest in many attempts to gag her and to shut her down. The first started when One Nation in 1998 got 23% of the vote overnight in Queensland in the state election, and Liberals and Labor went into a panic. They infiltrated a party to bring down the branches. They hammered her raw new state MPs. The Liberal-Labor federally and state concocted a legislation to falsely jail her. She was jailed, released on appeal, the only political prisoner in this country's history, released on appeal. Then falsely denigrated as a racist when she's never uttered a racist word in her life. The worst thing Aussies can do is to call a woman a racist. That's the worst thing they can do to a woman. Why? And I'll tell you why. Because it stops people being proud of voting, and so they're quiet, and then they don't vote One Nation. But people are waking. People are waking. Social media, listen to people on the streets, listen to people in the regions. And I want to thank Senator Ayres for putting on his display, because this is being broadcast and the people at home will be watching it. Senator Hanson's party, our party, the name of it says it all. One Nation. One Nation. The Greens cannot debate her position on merit. No data, no logical argument, yet people can see this and awareness is spreading. Why don't the Greens and Labor use the opportunity to debate her bill? Get their facts on the table. Put their views forward. That's what you're supposed to do. Represent the people. If you've got a transgender community, go ahead and spread that. There's no logical argument the Greens are putting forward, and people can see this, and that's why One Nation's vote is increasing. Let's have a look at biological gender. That's the only gender. Let's have a rational debate. Let's send the bill to a committee to have a rational inquiry. Let the people of Australia speak to this bill. And then we see what are you protecting? The suicides, when children disfigure their bodies and chemically stunt their mental development and social development. And then when they sadly learn that it's not reversible, they suicide. That's what you're doing. That is what you're doing. Women's rights, smashed in physical sports, deprived of years of training.
Sorry, the Minister, the point of order, Minister.
His remarks through the chair and not acting in such an aggressive way at other senators.
Senator Roberts, please address your comments through me.
Deputy President, what about men in dressing rooms for girls, playing rugby league in a sport for women? Censorship and lies are a form of control. Always beneath control, there is fear. Labels are the refuge of the ignorant, the incompetent, the dishonest and the fearful. Of what are you afraid? Open debate. People in Australia are not afraid of open debate. We have respect for Parliament. Senator Hanson rarely calls out. I never call out, because this Parliament stands for the people. That's why I don't call out. In recent years, people have had enough of your gutlessness, and when you target Pauline Hanson, her support and popularity rises. Thank you so much. Parliament is for people's voices to be heard. When people's representatives are silenced, it hurts the people. We need debate.
Minister.
Thank you. Well, just to make a few comments in the time left available. One, we don't support the suspension because we have a program to get to, and there are many other ways and forms and times in the program where senators can raise issues, as the one Senator Hanson is raising today. We would like to get back to our housing bill that this Senate has debated all day yesterday, and we have a small window of time today to debate that. So that's the first point. On the second point is, we did take the rare step of not agreeing with the first reading. It is a rare step. I think in my time in this place we have used it one other time in response to a bill that Senator Anning tried to introduce. And for us on this side of the chamber, the reason we took that decision, and we did think about it carefully, was about the debate that would happen in this place if a bill like that was introduced. And I think the performance from Senator Roberts just confirmed that the decision we took last week was right. Senator Roberts called for a rational debate and then gave a speech like that. There is no rational debate, Senator Roberts, on this. And there are many other places that Senator Hanson and you can speak about the matters that are contained in a bill that Senator Hanson seeks to introduce, but we draw the line that that bill should be subject of debate in this chamber, where we are leaders in our communities and leaders of the country. And you may scoff and you may put it on your social media so that we get inundated with all the hate and abuse that comes with that. That's fine. And we disagree on bills all the time in this place, all the time. They are on policy. And that's fine. This is a vibrant democracy. But when you have bills that seek to harm people, including young people, we will draw the line. That is a red line for us. We do not apologise. We know how vulnerable the gender-diverse community is. We know how they struggle. We do not think the Senate is a qualified place for that debate. That debate should be had at home, with friends, with professionals, with health professionals that seek to guide some of those decisions, some of those difficult decisions for young people in this country. They are qualified. An irrational debate in this place that seeks to hurt and undermine young people, we will draw the line. This is not about not allowing free speech or shutting down democracy. People introduce bills in this place all the time. Every private member's bill that comes in, we would probably, if it wasn't from our side, we would disagree with. That's what they're being pulled in for. But we have to have a line in this chamber that says, no, you know what? We're not going to let this parliament and everybody in it share their views on your personal choice. And that is the reason why we took this decision. So the comments from Senator Birmingham about the rights and policy and practice and convention and odges and all the rest, we agree with much of it. Indeed, almost everything he said. We allow bills to come into this place all the time, most of which we would disagree with. But when it concerns people, when it's such a deeply personal and divisive debate that you seek to bring into this chamber, and don't pretend it's otherwise, don't pretend that it's just a matter of policy interest for you. It's not. That's not how the debate about the gender-diverse community goes in this country. We know that. And the parliament should protect communities that we represent. Every person should be protected in this place. And that's why we took the decision that we took last week. That's why we have denied leave for it today. But we are not trying to stop Senator Hanson from speaking or raising issues. She is a senator, a leader. You have the forms of this place in which to do that. And you do it. You represent the interests that you seek to bring into this chamber, but you seek to bring in a bill, have that bill debated, have it discussed, have it open for hours of discussion in this place, and we say no. We say that's not right. And we think that for young people in particular, the Senate standing up on something like this and saying no, and we have to win a majority of votes. It's not as if this is being, you're being shut down without the will of the chamber. The chamber has to support that, and they did last week, and I hope that the chamber will oppose the suspension this morning and oppose the bill being brought on.
The time has expired for the debate. I intend to put the question. I put the question. This is the question in relation to the suspension of standing orders. I put the question. Those for the question say aye. Against no. I think the noes have it. Division required. Division's required. Ring the bells. 4 minutes.
Order. There being 27 ayes and 30 noes, the matter is resolved in the negative.